Hello, this is a second part of the Chunkloading rant, and today I'm going to explain two more issues that cause your redstone contraptions to break when they are reloaded. The first one is the block event loss. Basically, the game sometimes just doesn't save the block events. Uh, or to be more specific, it doesn't save them to disk ever. This is because the block events are stored per world, not per chunk. Thus, when the chunk unloads, the block events are still there. Moreover, such block events that are stuck in an unloaded or in a border chunk will each tick try to execute, fail because the chunk is not loaded to a sufficient level, and then reschedule themselves upon the next tick. And they will do so indefinitely until either the chunk is loaded and the block event is executed, or until the server stops, in which case the block event is just completely lost. Here is an example of how you can observe it. This machine will activate these pistons with one game tick offset, and at some point it will switch me to the spectator mode. Currently, the game rule spectator generates chunks is set to false. Thus, upon me going into spectator, this chunk will soon unload, as all of the others. And yeah, here. As you can see, this dust is actually powered. If I click on it, you can see that it is. This particular piston is already powered, but didn't start firing yet. This is because it was powered in the block entry phase by this redstone block 36 arriving. Thus, upon the next game tick of this piston being powered and the block event ticking, it will start extending. And I can show that if I go into creative, the chunks load back in and the scheduled block event successfully executes. But watch what happens if I restart the server in between unloading and loading this chunk. So this piston, again, has a block event scheduled at its position and will execute it as soon as it's loaded. Now, let me stop the server and restart it. It should restart within a couple seconds. So, if I go back into creative, you can see that the chunks got loaded and the contraption continued its working. Yet this particular piston did not fire. Why is that? That is because the block event that corresponded to this piston was scheduled before the chunk unloaded and didn't execute ever. Upon the server restart, it was lost because the block events aren't saved to disk at all, and thus we end up with an unfired piston. Obviously, pistons sometimes failing to fire is not really healthy for redstone, but well, it is this way. I hope that it gets fixed eventually, just all of the other chunk loading issues. Another thing that doesn't get saved to disk ever and is lost upon server stop and restart is the torch burnout map. The torch burnout map helps the torch know when it is supposed to burn out. Each time the torch turns on, it adds an entry to the torch burnout map at its position, and if there are enough entries, the torch knows that it activated a few times and burns out. However, this burnout map isn't saved upon server restarts. So, if you restart the server, in between the torch activating again and again, it will just never burn out because each time the burnout entry in the map is lost. I would showcase this issue, however, there is another bug that's stopping me from doing it. Turns out it is enough to just reload the chunk in between the torch activating to make the torch not burn out ever. This is because of the second issue of today's video, the use of global time. Why is that an issue? Well, the entries in the torch burnout map depend on global time, on the server time that always runs. So if I unload this chunk, then the corresponding burnout entries that correspond to this torch can expire while the server ticks, even though this chunk is frozen. So if I unload this chunk in between torch activations and wait enough, I can make all of the torch burnout entries expire each time, thus the torch will never burn out. Here is how it happens. So, um, as you can see, the torch just keeps activating upon me switching back to creative and loading it. And even though it should have already burned out by now, it didn't. So yeah. Mhm. And if you're curious, this is how fast a torch burns out under regular conditions. So this is it for today's video. I hope I will release all of the others relatively soon. That's it.